attention. To the crew of the commercial vessel Nostromo, a word of warning. A word of warning. A word of warning. Alien. Coming this summer to a theater near you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Geekfest Rants. Joining me today is James. Say hi, James.
Hello.
My name is Carlos Perron, as usual, and today we are going to be taking a first look or getting a first impression of what we've seen so far of the upcoming Alien prequel, parentheses, it's not a prequel, but it is a prequel, close parentheses, film, which is Prometheus, like we said before. This is directed by Ridley Scott, and even though they're trying to create a mystery and an aura of confusion around this film of, is it a prequel, is it not a prequel, it's a film that apparently is related to Alien, and it takes place before Alien. So again, I think it's some kind of marketing ploy they're doing, and it could be also the reality of the film that they're trying to distance it a lot from the traditional prequel machine that you see out there with most prequels that are made. I think they're trying to kind of redefine the term prequel or reboot or remake or whatever. But so far, we haven't seen too much. And today we're going to talk about the things we've seen. One clear first impression of the film is these pictures that were published recently on Entertainment Weekly, which give you an actual finished look of what these actors look like in their costumes, in the settings, in these big, enormous sets that kind of reference back to especially the original Alien film, gigantic monolithic structures and really weird-looking stuff. But there are a lot of things out there that are slowly trickling information, and this seems pretty interesting. So let's start off by going through the list of what we know in terms of the people involved. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I think what you said about trying to go around the prequel name, I think lately, to some extent, the Star Wars movies, everything's had a prequel, everything wants to be a prequel, and I think it's gotten a bad name. So if you call this an Alien prequel, it's now everybody's expectations are it's an Alien prequel. And if it's something he tries differently, that's just set it in this world and not directly set before Alien, people will give you a hard time. So I really think that it's a smart move. What my first encounter with this is a bootleg. Now, I don't recommend people look at that because it kind of is unfair to the movie. But what I saw made me feel like I was watching something in the Alien world. I don't care if it's a prequel, if it's just in that world. I was very impressed with the bootleg. I like the music, whether it's real or not, whether it's just something that some fan put in. I don't know where this bootleg came from, but I liked what I saw, and I felt like I was watching my first look at the 1979 movie. And if that's the route they're going on, they did a smart thing. And I want to know more. I want to know what's going on with what this all means.
Well, some of the actors that we know for a fact are in this film are pretty well-known names. Some of them, they're almost kind of like the flavor of the month type of actors, the actors that are about to break big or the actors that just broke big. The lead of the film appears to be Noomi Rapace, who is the actress who starred in the original version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. She played the lead character in that film. She was all punk looking and in goth makeup and all kinds of weird stuff. In this film, she's
actually attractive.
Yeah, she looks more like a regular girl. And
if we have to put labels on it, is she a Ripley type character?
From the pictures that we see here, because she's the lead character, she seems to be the star, the person we're following around. And if you've seen her in these original Girl in the Dragon Tattoo and Girl Who Played with Fire and The Hornet's Nest, all these films, she's a pretty strong physical character who can handle herself, at least, on the screen. It's really funny a lot of times when these actors that you watch portray what would be an American character or something else. She might be Swedish for all I know because it's a Swedish film for her. Yeah. But it's like when you see them and they have this bizarre accent when they're talking in real life, it's just like, what the heck is this? Yeah, and it's amazing how they pull off these accents.
These days with a lot of the shows.
Another actress involved in the film is Charlize Theron, very well-known American actress. No, actually, she's South African. That's right.
Uh-huh.
It's They're going to get me with
Can
every
an
single...
American get work in movies
No
anymore?
way, man. She seems to play, and again, from the pictures we've seen here, I think the hint is that she's going to be a little bit of the heavy, or the unknown heavy, or the somewhat heavy.
Yeah, maybe we don't know it going in, but
Now,
it turns
granted,
out that way.
a lot of what we're reading and seeing could be considered spoilery material. So obviously, if you don't want to be spoiled, don't listen to this. But there is a hint that she might be the company person. And if this is attached at all to the original Alien film, the company was Weyland-Yutani or something like that, which they have referenced in their future sequels. They continued the line of referring to this company as the bad guy kind of thing. So
a corporation.
Right. So she might be someone associated with that. Another actor involved is Michael Fassbender. Now, talk about the flavor of the month. He's coming off of being basically on fire from X-Men First Class. Before that, his other big hit was Inglourious Basterds, which he had a very small role, but very memorable. And that's when everybody started noticing him. And even with X-Men First Class, I know a lot of people, including myself, who think that he deserves an Oscar nomination for that one because he was so good in that. And now he is this hot commodity. Everybody wants to get him in the film because he's just exploding into Hollywood.
I see Guy Pearce is in it.
Guy Pearce seems to have a smaller role in it. I don't know exactly who he plays, but there's also another actor who is familiar probably to a lot of British television viewers. His name is Idris Elba. I know him from The Wire.
I know him from The American Office.
That's right.
He was the new boss after
he did
Michael's
a stint
company
there,
went
and he was
bankrupt.
also in Thor. But The Wire, my God, again, one of these shows where a lot of the leads, they're British, and it's like, oh my God, how did they do these accents? They're incredible. But this actor was unbelievable. What a great actor he is. And the final actor that they're at least showing us with these pictures is Logan Marshall Green, who, when I was looking at the picture, I'm like, is that Tom Hardy? Because it looks a lot like Tom Hardy. I'm like, he has that same nose and eyes, and I'm like... And I started looking around, and the only thing I see that I recognize from his resume is Devil. Devil was a movie that was promoted as M. Night Shyamalan's Devil. And this was at a time, which I guess we're still in that time, where if you put M. Night Shyamalan's name on a movie, people laugh at it. He used to have a lot of clout in Hollywood, but recently most of his movies have been crap.
The Last Airbender didn't help.
Oh my God, it was a complete flop. And in this particular movie, he wasn't the director. He was just the producer. So it was kind of like M. Night Shyamalan Presents type of deal.
Which might not be a good thing
Which
either.
I have a feeling it probably hurt the movie. But ironically, the movie was better than his last probably 3 or 4 films. It was a cool
I
little...
don't remember a movie I liked of his since the comic book one.
Unbreakable?
Unbreakable.
Yeah, he's not in a good streak lately. But going back to this movie, this is the movie that was about people trapped in an elevator, and one of them is probably the devil or something. It was a concept movie, but it was better than I thought it was going to be. And this guy played the cop who is outside of the elevator trying to get into the elevator. And he was a pretty good actor, and I'm surprised, and I'm actually glad they actually got him to do this. Obviously, this is for him. He's probably the luckiest guy in the whole cast because, you know, getting to act on a Ridley Scott quote-unquote prequel of Alien, it's got success written all over it. But from what I've seen on these pictures, the atmosphere of these sets, it screams Alien, especially the beginning of Alien. You see a lot of objects that look kind of like eggs, and I could have swore I read somewhere they called them ampules. So it's almost like a birthing chamber type of deal. There are these big statuesque
The statues are what got my
looking
attention.
things that look very human, which is kind of weird too, because it's like, wait a minute, this is an alien environment and very human looking statues. It's odd.
The feel of the photos made me feel like the chamber in the beginning of Alien when they see the
jockey?
It's been called the space jockey. And it had that vibe in it, in that chamber, in that vastness, that largeness, like we're in the middle of some giant ship or, chamber or something definitely not human.
The theme, it's a little odd. Obviously, they're keeping everything as much under wraps as possible. And some people are reporting that they're trying to achieve almost a 2001-like atmosphere and importance to the film of what they're trying to say to everybody. That this isn't just a horror film about a creature that eats people or whatever. This is more of a...
Like where we come from?
Right, like the birth of humanity type of a thing. And it's like, whoa, this is very ambitious overtones. Again, in the spoilery part of this, apparently the Michael Fassbender character might or might not be some kind of a droid or
Kind of like Bishop.
a Bishop type or an Ash type of character.
So are we to feel maybe this is more not a direct remake, since obviously the same director, but does it follow those same guidelines? Do we know any about that yet?
We don't know for sure. My theory, and this is something that we've talked about before, is that they're trying to, I think, maybe create a new, I don't know if you can call it genre, but in the similar way where the term reboot became very trendy in the last 7 to 10 years, let's say.
Yeah, which I don't like.
I think what they're trying to do now is create, and if they are, and if it works, I love it. I would love it if they did this. They're trying to create a film that can stand on its own 2 feet from beginning to end.
But maybe be in that
tell a
environment.
story that makes sense and people like and hopefully is successful. That fits a genre, square. It
Well,
fits
it
in the
also
box
doesn't
of a
hurt
genre.
that if this does turn out to be related to Alien, it certainly sells Alien product again.
Oh, of course.
To new young people who have no clue what went on in 1979.
But see, that's the catch. The catch, I think, is that they're trying to create something that stands on its own 2 feet, and as a bonus to the fans, it's tied to something that you love. So, for example, in a similar way, I remember we talked about in the past when the Tron Legacy sequel was put out, they kind of downplayed the fact that it was a Tron sequel. It was a Tron sequel because it was Tron.
Yeah.
But from a marketing perspective, they kind of downplayed it a little bit.
A lot of time had passed
Right,
between Tron and Tron Legacy. It wasn't helping itself,
Right, it
so they
almost
didn't need to
seemed
promote
like
it.
they were downplaying the fact that the DVDs were out there. They purposely didn't release the Blu-ray versions of the original. You figure that when the movie's coming, you want to put out as much product
They waited
as
until
possible.
Tron Legacy came out on Blu-ray for them to remaster the
Once,
original.
I think they were afraid at the time that the aura of the cheesiness of part
The
of
80s
Tron
video game would
that would
diminish.
turn people off. But once they realized they had a hit on their hands, that's when they were like,
They
okay,
embraced the original.
it's like open up the floodgates. Let it all come out now that people are happy and they're satisfied. Obviously, if the movie was a flop, they probably would have never released the rest of the merchandising and the other stuff. So this film, I think what they're trying to do, but I don't think they're trying to do it for financial reasons. I don't think this is a studio being a little, is anybody going to want to see a Ridley Scott film about aliens again? Granted, the previous films were not super hits, but I don't think it's more of a fear thing. I think it's more of an artsy thing. I think this is Ridley Scott saying, I'm going to redefine the genre and I don't want to do a prequel. I don't want to do a sequel. I don't want to reimagine. I don't want to reboot. I want to do something that's completely separate but related. So if that's where they're going and it works, great, because I'll bet you everybody and their grandmother will try to do that next.
And he seems to be bucking the trend or starting a new trend of a director going back to his original work a long time after, because he's talked about doing Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Sequel-esque.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, I'd be disappointed if it was a sequel. I'd rather it be what he's doing here.
The other thing about being able to work in this world, in this environment, let's say, without it being completely connected to it, is that it doesn't give you a chance to mess around with characters that you either like or hate and kind of mess up their story. In other words, if this is a prequel and it's not very closely connected to the original film, then you don't have the opportunity to mess up the original characters. Yeah. You don't mess with their storylines. You don't mess with how you feel about them, which is one of the things that really bothered me about some of the sequels, specifically the third one. As far as I'm concerned,
it disregarded the good parts of what we saw in Alien.
As far as I'm concerned, the first film, we talked about this. The first film is a suspense horror film. It's Jaws in space. I know that's very cliche to call it that, but it's a suspense film. It's a thriller. The second film was an action adventure sci-fi film. The third and fourth, they went in a different direction. In a way, with the third, they tried to get back to the roots of...
It's a prison movie.
They tried to get back to the roots of the feel of the first film, which is fine. I mean, David Fincher was a young director at the time. He was the flavor of the month, the up-and-coming director. But
you can see he tried. Looking back on it, I hated it. I remember seeing it in the theater. I remember the anticipation. I guess that was a lesson learned, and don't expect too much because you probably won't get it. But I've seen it recently. He tried. It does have some merit. It's just not a good follow-up to Aliens.
Right. And it's really unknown as to exactly what went wrong with the film. It's pretty well known that something happened between him and the studios where he kind of lost control of the film in terms of he wasn't able to edit it his own way or shoot it, or something happened where he was not happy with what was happening and the way that it turned out, to the point where I think he wanted to, at a certain point, distance himself from the final product as much as possible. Now, given that, I don't know for sure if the story elements, the story decisions of the film could be blamed on the studio or him.
Yeah. It'd be nice if a book came out to explore that, or more in depth. I mean, he may have talked about it casually, but we just don't remember it.
Right. And specifically by that, I mean the whole issue of killing off central characters that, why? In other words, is the reason because of financial reasons, logistical reasons, or is it artistic reasons? Yeah. And in my opinion, whether you hit any of those reasons, and whether they came from the studio or the director or the writer or whomever, to me, they're completely unacceptable. You don't have to completely destroy a house before you build your own house. And that's what he did, or somebody did. With Alien 3, you took something that was built and said, all right, you guys like this? It's gone. We're doing something different. And I don't know, again, why it was done. I don't think it was necessary. I think you could have written yourself out of that. You could have taken those central characters and have them live in a separate way. If you wanted to detach your lead Sigourney Weaver character and throw her in an environment that's completely alien and hostile, a prison, they could have done it in a way where she somehow gets separated.
Without killing the MacGuffin of the first movie.
Right.
Newt was the the second movie.
Right.
That was Ripley's.
It's the heart of the movie.
Yeah. And
it's
she's gone.
It's Ripley's.
Sorry if I've spoiled anything all these years later, but then she's gone.
It's
Goodbye.
Ripley's motivation.
Yes, exactly.
For the entire film, pretty much. In Aliens,
her mother, and it was a dual thing. The Queen, the mother of the aliens, and Ripley, the surrogate mother of Newt, trying to help her. And
right. And like I said, you could have gotten out of there. You could have written yourself out of it without having to trample over already existing material. That's like kind of saying, okay, at the end of Star Wars, Empire starts and they just destroy the rebel base, and Han Solo died, Chewbacca died, Princess Leia died, and the droids are dead. And now Luke is up by himself trying to fight the Empire. It's like, why crapple over something that took so long to build and establish? But again, we don't know that. Was it an artistic thing? Yeah. Who the hell knows? But that's one of the
I've
biggest...
tried to look it up. I just haven't got any solid answers.
That's one of the biggest flaws in my view of the third film. Fincher is known for he's a very talented and very dark person in terms of he doesn't mind, stomping over sacred ground or
look at
tackling very horrific sexual horror.
Family.
So that's the only reason when I look at 7, and I love 7, that's why I'm thinking sometimes, well, maybe that's what he wanted to do. You never know. But in this particular subject matter, it didn't work. Now with the next film, they tried to go in a completely different direction, and they hired, I believe, a different director.
That came across to me as like, look, we've got these characters and we need to make some money on these characters because otherwise we're wasting,
Well, they went in the future, I don't know how many years, and they try to tell you that they found a sample of her blood and they recloned her because the theme was cloning a little bit. And then she has, a mother-daughter kind of relationship with Winona Ryder, and she's the robot in this particular one. And again, they went in a different direction that kind of like, we'll see, I don't know. And after that, the Alien films basically got mixed up with Predator films.
They tried to mix it up with Alien versus Predator.
It turned into Abbott and Costello meets the Mummy, basically.
If I recall that last Alien versus Predator, it was awful.
They did like 2 or 3 of those.
How did these major sewer systems wind up out in the middle of some Midwestern?
It doesn't matter. Town? That was just it's a pairing up. Yeah. It's more of a.
It was terrible. Well, I've got a couple questions though, since we've talked about Prometheus. Assuming we find some answers, it may not be the same alien. It might look totally different. What is the alien? Do we have any solid? We have the designs by Giger. He's got those designs. So he created, in a sense, the look of it. But that doesn't mean That's what
No,
is the
yeah.
alien?
He
Is the alien the
no,
face hugger?
He created an alien,
Yeah.
but he wasn't in charge of creating
The
where
story
this
of-
alien came
So
from.
that's why I asked.
So
is the alien the face hugger? Is the alien
Well-
a look of what we know as the alien because that mixed with humans?
Well, what you have to remember is
we
that
saw it when it mixed with a dog.
here's the thing. When it mixed with a dog or another animal, for example, that didn't happen until the future films, the third
So
and fourth
that
film.
may not even be
So
anybody's original
we don't know
intent.
for sure if Ridley Scott is going to follow that
Well, he doesn't have to.
canon.
This being a prequel or
So-
anything like that, he doesn't have
But
to.
what we do know for a fact is that there are these eggs, or there were these eggs in this ship, that once the eggs open, you have a traditional face hugger. The face hugger then implants its parasitic body inside a host, which could be a human, could be an animal from future films. As a matter of fact, even in the first film, they talk about on screen about what we refer to as a space jockey who seems to have a chest plate rupture.
See, that's the thing, too. Doesn't that have the look a little bit of a larger giant? What we know as the alien is what I'm referring to as the alien.
Not only,
Doesn't
not
that look
only
like
the
a larger version, just slightly different facial
not only the
expressions?
space jockey, but the whole structure he's in. That whole ship has that biomechanical texture, very wet, humid, tubes, dark, a lot of curves in it. So it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the
so
egg?
let's explore that. Speaking of the egg.
Does the alien have its shape that we know based on its last host?
Now, this
the last
space-
host is this space jockey.
This space jockey looks ancient.
Right.
Now,
Plus-
it could not be, maybe it's not as old as we think,
Plus
but
it
looks,
also-
it looks like a fossil of
Plus,
something.
it also looks as if a ship crashed as a result of a pilot losing control of it, as a result of him being injured by this alien creature.
And this ship is what they stumble upon,
Later
Ripley's
in two.
Nostromo crew. Now,
In 1 and 2.
we see, assuming they land on LV-426,
LV-426.
and this space jockey, and this field or ship's hold of eggs. Are we supposed to assume, this is all speculative, we may never even find out, are we supposed to assume those eggs have been there and viable for tens, hundreds of years? Assuming the space jockey is ancient, have the eggs been there? Were they laid by a queen like James Cameron insinuates in the second movie? Where'd the queen go? What happened?
I'm not sure if I might have read this somewhere or what, but I think a theory going around is that the original alien ship, crashed ship, is more of a transport ship that is transporting biomechanical weapons. And the weapons are the eggs. So
they're pulling the same thing that Ripley's Marine crew were forced into.
Right. It's some kind of transport ship that something malfunctions, a neck catches, and the weapon gets loose in the ship, and the weapon crashes the ship as a result of it. So that's a theory.
Then assuming whatever burst out of the space jockey is an alien. It might look completely different based on that. It might lead it to have that bit of a look since the space jockey uses its DNA. Where did that alien go? Is that alien does eventually die? There are so many. I mean, obviously, we're never going to know. I'm asking these rhetorical questions.
That alien, you could say,
if it was hundreds of years, that alien died off.
Yeah, you're not dealing with
where.
supernatural beings here. You're dealing with some kind of animal creature that, if it doesn't eat it, it's probably going to die, you imagine. I don't think it necessarily lived long enough to wait for the second film, which takes place like 57 years later.
So if a queen somewhere laid these eggs that are in this transport ship, the queen doesn't still have to be there. It could have been separated from the eggs.
It could have been on a different planet. They just went to... they went to a planet, they grabbed all these eggs, put them in their hold, and flew away.
We're making our own prequel here. Let's say the space jockey accidentally gets exposed to a face hugger like John Hurt's character.
Right. The rest of his crew, same thing.
And then, exactly. We don't know if there were more crew or if this was an individual pilot on a transport ship. Okay, so he has a chest burst and dies. Whatever came out of that creature, we'll call an alien, whatever it looked like. It just dies off, you figure, because it doesn't have anything to eat.
Yeah, once it's done, it's done.
What does an alien eat? Do we know? Did the alien ever eat? Was the alien killing for food, for fun, out of instinct? I mean,
I think it kills.
It's just a predator.
It kills by instinct, and it
Pardon
kills.
the pun?
It not only does it kill by instinct, but it also captures you and cocoons you.
Yeah. Okay. So
reproductive
Yeah,
purposes.
we forgot about that. In some cases, they were turning. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in some of the cutscenes that we didn't quite see in Alien, Ripley stumbles upon Dallas, who's Tom Skerritt.
Cocoon.
Is he being cocooned to be for another alien from an egg, or was he being turned into an egg? I think.
Well, I don't know, but I think the cocooning could be one or two things. It could be cocooning for implantation, for reproductory purposes.
Do you remember those scenes?
Yeah, I remember.
He became a giant egg.
No, he was cocooned inside a whole thing, but he was all kind of like messed up.
Were they potentially preparing him for a face hugger?
It could be preparing for a face hugger, or it could be preparing him to eat.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It could be like a fly that kind of wraps itself leaves it there. When it's hungry, it goes and eats it. Because they don't go into that.
Yeah, and since it was a cut scene, it may not exist.
Right,
really,
the cocooning material, or the cocooning storyline,
it's like this goo that hardens.
Is something that they avoided in the first film. That's why they cut the scene out, because I guess maybe they didn't want to explain it too much.
But
in the second
that it appears
film,
in the second scene prominently,
right?
James Cameron must have seen those cut scenes before we did,
right?
So he could implement them.
And it helped him in his storyline, because his storyline had a lot to do with capturing somebody and no, they're not dead yet. Let's go get them and let's save them because they're not dead yet. Blah blah blah, that kind of thing.
I mean, we're giving a lot of attention to these movies, but it seems like at least the first two were so well prepared, almost as if they teamed up together. And and that's James Cameron. He's very thorough, as we know. I mean, you can't take that away from him.
Well, he was able to transition from one to the other. He was able to segue from Scott's vision to his vision without insulting,
Ridley Scott's help,
not only without his help, but without damaging the material.
Yeah, and so assuming Ridley Scott now is back in control of this plan,
right?
And assuming he still has a plan, that brings us back to Prometheus and how it's very interesting
And again, he doesn't have to worry about following up anybody.
No.
Because number one, he's not doing a sequel, and the only material he has to, if he wants to, touch upon at all is his own material. He doesn't have to even go to Cameron. He could, if he wanted to, deal with something having to do with cocooning, for example, or something to do with queens.
I would hope that if he does have a plan, and this is something he wants to do again, a sequel to his prequel, to respect at least the Cameron stuff, because, it is in reverse. It is very well prepared, the aliens.
But again, the only thing I've always heard from the beginning of this project, the rumors of, is he going to do one? Is he going to do one? He's talking about it. He's always kept talking about that he doesn't want to do just a straight sequel, prequel. He wants to give it a little twist. He wants to create something a little different. And hopefully that's the direction we seem to be going in terms of creating something that stands on its own two legs. And the bonus is the connection to Alien.
Well, June 2012, which is probably not too far away, is when we'll find out. And I hopefully we'll be pleased.
And sooner than that, hopefully in the next few weeks or months, we'll hopefully catch a full trailer. The leaked trailer will hopefully be attached to some end of the year movie, maybe early 2012 movie or something. And then I'm sure the next day it'll be officially out for everybody to see. And again, it's Ridley Scott. The trailer is going to be fantastic because he's a great director.
I met him several years ago, and he's a thoughtful guy.
Plus, I have a feeling if this is successful, that will really re-energize him, I think, to tackle on maybe the Blade Runner sequel that we're all hoping one day we get, or prequel, or whatever the hell he wants to call it.
Yeah. It'd be great if there's some way to return to that world, but not ruin it.
Right.
Which is, like we said in previous shows, it's a nice world to be a part of.
Without the pressure of interacting or the pressure of having to live up to
30, 50 years later in the Blade Runner story.
Yeah.
And with that, we don't need Harrison Ford. It's great. It'd be great.
Plus, Harrison Ford will be obviously too old to play himself. He might have a cameo or something,
he
maybe.
wouldn't be too old to play himself if it's, say, 30, 40 years in the future, and he's not a replicant, which is what I believe.
But you got to remember how much bad blood there was making that film, so who knows? That's a pipe dream for us. That's a future episode once again. But anyway, James, thank you for joining me on this quick look, first impressions of Prometheus, and hopefully we'll talk again soon when we can see more footage or the film itself. On behalf of everybody here at Geekfest Rants, we'd like to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you here next time on Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye. boop, 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 boop.
Stop.